300,000 years ago, a human being woke up before dawn on the eastern edge of what is now the African continent. They were cold. The fire had died down during the night, and the air before sunrise carried a chill that had no name in their language, but that their body recognized immediately, the specific cold that signals the boundary between night and day, between danger and light, between the time when predators move freely and the time when humans do. They rose. They checked the people sleeping around them, not out of duty, not out of habit formed by social obligation, but out of a biological imperative so deep it operated below consciousness. Are the people I am responsible for still here? Are they safe? Is the group intact? The answer, this morning, was yes. And something in them settled. Something that had been running a low-grade vigilance all night released slightly. The group was whole. The day could begin. That person, that specific, unremarkable, fully human person waking in the African dawn 300,000 years ago, shares approximately 99.9% of their DNA with you. Their brain, running the same neurological hardware as yours, processed fear and love and grief and curiosity through the same limbic architecture. Their body regulated temperature, hunger, pain, and social, belonging through the same hormonal systems. They dreamed, they grieved their dead, they told stories around fires. They wondered why they were here. And if they could somehow be transported forward through 300,000 years of time and placed in front of you, in your home, in your life, in the world you have built, the question that this investigation is going to spend the next 20 minutes answering is not whether they would be confused by what they saw. They would be profoundly, completely, irreversibly confused by almost everything they saw. The question is something different, something more specific, and the answer to it is not what you think. Here is the thing that every discussion of ancestral humans and modern life gets wrong. It starts from the assumption that the distance between them and us is primarily a distance of capability, that we have more, know more, can do more, and that the gap is therefore a gap of advancement. That framing misses the only question that actually matters. Not what we have gained, but what we have preserved. Because the ancestral human looking at your life would not be assessing your technology. Technology is surface. They would be looking at something deeper. They would be looking at the things that do not change across 300,000 years, the things that evolution encoded into the human nervous system so deeply that no cultural transformation, no technological revolution, no dietary shift, no urbanization, no social restructuring has touched them. And then they would be asking, with the specific and unsparing perceptiveness of someone whose survival depended on reading other humans accurately, whether those things are still running in you, whether the human operating system that 300,000 years of selection pressure produced is still intact underneath the modern interface. The answer is yes. But the investigation of how to reach that answer takes us somewhere that I don't think you are expecting. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. Think about the last time you felt genuinely known, not recognized, not socially acknowledged. Known, the specific feeling of being in the presence of people who understand your history, your failures, your private fears, and your particular way of moving through the world. People who would notice if you disappeared. People who would come. Think about how frequently you experience that feeling. Think about whether you experience it at all. Now think about this. The ancestral human waking in the African dawn 300,000 years ago experienced that feeling continuously, involuntarily, inescapably, because the 15 people sleeping around them had no choice but to know them completely. There was no social option of superficiality in a group of 15. You either knew each other or you died. The feeling of being known was not a luxury in the ancestral world. It was the baseline condition of human existence. And one of the questions this investigation is going to answer, not by telling you what you have lost, but by showing you what is still there, is what it means that the human nervous system was built in that environment and is running in this one. Here is the theory that evolutionary psychology has been building toward for 3 decades, and that most popular discussions of ancient humans entirely miss. It is not that modern humans have diverged from their ancestral selves. It is that they haven't. The behavioral and neurological architecture of Homo sapiens is, in the overwhelming majority of its functional parameters, identical to the architecture of the humans who lived before agriculture, before cities, before writing, before any of the structures that we use to define civilization. The fear response is the same. The attachment system is the same. The social monitoring system, The constant unconscious tracking of group dynamics, status, belonging, and threat is the same. The drive toward narrative, toward the imposition of story and meaning on random events, is the same. The specific grief that accompanies the loss of a person who was woven into daily life is the same. None of these things have been modified by 10,000 years of civilization. The neocortex that overlays them has learned new tricks. The prefrontal cortex has developed new capacities for abstract reasoning and delayed gratification. But the core operating system, the limbic infrastructure that runs the human experience of being alive, is running the same code it ran 300,000 years ago. And here is what that means. When you feel lonely in a crowd, your ancestral operating system is telling you that the crowd does not constitute a tribe. When you feel the specific anxiety of social exclusion, your ancestral operating system is correctly identifying an existential threat, because in the environment it was built for, social exclusion was lethal. When you feel the pull toward a small group of people over the anonymous mass, your ancestral operating system is running exactly as designed. In 2008, social psychologist John Cacioppo at the University of Chicago published a longitudinal analysis of loneliness in the American population that contained a finding so specific and so disturbing that it has taken the research community nearly 15 years to fully process its implications. Cacioppo found that chronic loneliness, defined not as being physically alone, but as the subjective experience of social disconnection, of not having the quality of social relationships that the nervous system registers as adequate, produces physiological effects equivalent in magnitude to smoking 15 cigarettes per day. The immune system is suppressed. Inflammatory markers elevate. Sleep architecture degrades. Cognitive decline accelerates. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the system that regulates the body's response to threat, runs in a chronically activated state, as if the lonely person is continuously experiencing a low-grade survival emergency, which, from the perspective of the ancestral operating system, they are. The ancestral nervous system does not distinguish between the social isolation of a modern person living alone in a city of 8 million and the social isolation of a Paleolithic human separated from their group in open terrain. Both register as the same category of threat: alone, without the group, in danger. The modern person knows cognitively that they are not in danger. The ancestral operating system does not operate through cognitive knowledge. It operates through the body. And the body of a chronically lonely modern human is running the same emergency protocol as a Paleolithic human who has lost their tribe. Wait. If the nervous system cannot distinguish between modern urban isolation and ancestral social exile, if the biological response is identical, then what does that tell us about the environment we have built and the species that is trying to live in it? But the loneliness finding is only the first piece of what the ancestral human would read in you, because social connection is only one of the 4 things they would be assessing. And the second one, the one that most directly connects to the physical experience of being a body in the world, is something that the ancestral observer would notice within approximately the first 30 seconds of watching you move through a day. Not what you do, how your body relates to what you do. And what they would observe there is something that no psychological framework has fully accounted for. Let's follow the investigation, because this requires going through 4 specific categories, 4 things the ancestral human would assess, and understanding what each one reveals about the operating system that is running underneath your modern life. The first is what we have already established: connection. Are there people who know your name and your history and would come if you disappeared? The ancestral human would check this the way you check whether your phone is charged, not consciously, but continuously, because the answer determines whether survival is possible. The second category is rhythm. The ancestral human lived in continuous relationship with light and dark, with the cycle of the moon, with the seasons, with the biological rhythms that those cycles entrained. Cortisol rising with the dawn, melatonin falling with the light, hunger aligned with activity, sleep aligned with darkness. The body's internal chronobiology was synchronized with the external environment because the external environment provided the synchronizing signals continuously and inescapably. The ancestral observer watching a modern human, waking to an alarm in artificial light, eating at times disconnected from hunger cues, sleeping in a room lit by devices, working in environments where the sun's position is irrelevant, would be watching a biological clock running without its calibration signal. They would see a body trying to maintain internal time without external time. They would not have language for what they were observing, but they would feel it as something wrong, as something out of register with the world. The third category is physical purpose. The ancestral human did not exercise. They had no concept of exercise as a separate activity distinct from the activities of daily life, because daily life was physically demanding in ways that produced the same hormonal and cardiovascular outcomes that modern exercise science identifies as necessary for health. They walked, they carried, they climbed, they dug, they built. Every physical act was purposeful, connected to food, to shelter, to the maintenance of relationships, to the survival of the group. The body was used for things that mattered, and the using of it produced the neurochemical rewards, endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, the specific satisfaction of physical competence that the nervous system offers as reinforcement for behaviors necessary to survival. A body that sits, that uses its extraordinary physical capacity for almost nothing except the manipulation of small devices, is deprived of this neurochemical reinforcement continuously. It is running a musculoskeletal and cardiovascular system that evolved for sustained daily use in a context that demands almost none. The ancestral observer would find this difficult to understand, not the sitting. The purposelessness. Why is this person not doing anything with their body? What are they for? The fourth category is belonging, and it is the most subtle of the four and the most important. Belonging is not the same as connection. Connection is about being known. Belonging is about being part of something that continues beyond you. The ancestral human belonged to a group whose continuation was the entire context of their individual life. Their choices mattered to the group. Their skills were needed by the group. Their death would leave a gap that the group would feel. They were not replaceable. They were not interchangeable with another member. They were specifically, irreplaceably themselves in a context that needed exactly them. The modern human, living in a city of millions, working in an organization that will replace them within weeks of their departure, maintaining relationships across distances that make physical presence rare, may have connection without belonging, may be known without being needed. And the ancestral operating system, which was built in a world where connection and belonging were always simultaneous, does not easily distinguish between the two. It generates belonging hunger in the presence of connection absence with the same force it generates hunger for food in the presence of caloric absence. The signal is correct. The environment is the problem. The neuroscience of social belonging has produced findings in the past decade that have substantially altered the theoretical framework for understanding human motivation and well-being. A 2013 study by researcher Matthew Lieberman at UCLA, published in his book Social, Why Our Brains Are Wired to Connect, reviewed neuroimaging data showing that the default mode network, the brain's resting state activity when not engaged in a specific cognitive task, is almost entirely devoted to social cognition. Thinking about other people, modeling their mental states, reviewing social interactions, planning future social behavior. The brain, when given nothing else to do, immediately begins processing the social world. Lieberman's interpretation was direct. The brain treats social connection not as a reward but as a need, as fundamental to survival as food and shelter in the architecture of biological motivation. A 2019 study published in Nature Neuroscience found that the neural response to acute social isolation in humans activates the same midbrain dopamine circuitry that responds to hunger. The craving state produced by social isolation is neurochemically analogous to the craving state produced by caloric deprivation. You crave connection the way you crave food, because the ancestral operating system that runs you treats them as equivalent survival necessities. And a 2021 study in PNAS by researchers at MIT found that even brief periods of social isolation, a single day without meaningful human contact, produced measurable reductions in activity in the substantia nigra, one of the brain's primary dopamine-producing regions, and a corresponding increase in the subjective craving for social contact that participants described with language typically associated with physical hunger. One day, the social hunger system activates within 24 hours of deprivation. The ancestral human never went 24 hours without meaningful human contact in their entire life. Think about what the ancestral operating system produces in a modern environment. The social monitoring system, continuously scanning for inclusion, exclusion, status, and threat within the group, runs against a social environment of thousands of shallow contacts rather than 15 deep ones. It cannot calibrate. It generates chronic low-grade social anxiety because the signal it is designed to read Is the group intact? Am I included? Is my position secure? Cannot be resolved in an environment where the group is too large, too transient, and too superficial to provide the resolving data. The physical purpose system generates restlessness, irritability, and the specific dissatisfaction of capacity unused, the uncomfortable awareness of a body capable of extraordinary things being asked to do almost nothing. The rhythm system generates the chronic fatigue and mood dysregulation of a biological clock running without calibration, the feeling of being perpetually slightly jet-lagged, slightly out of sync, slightly behind the light. And the belonging system generates what the research literature calls meaning deficit, the specific existential emptiness of a person who is connected but not needed, present but not essential, alive but not for anything in particular that only they could do. These are not separate problems with separate solutions. They are the outputs of a single operating system running in an environment it was not built for. And the ancestral human observing you would not identify them as disorders. They would identify them as the predictable responses of a healthy biological system to an environment that is providing the wrong inputs. I want you to feel what it was like to be a human in the environment the ancestral operating system was built for. You are 30 years old. You have known the 15 people around you since childhood. They know your history the way you know the layout of your own home, not because they studied it, but because it is simply the furniture of their daily awareness. When you are afraid, they know before you say it. When you are in pain, someone moves toward you without being asked. When you do something that serves the group, bring food, repair a shelter, calm a frightened child, the gratitude is immediate, personal, and specific. Not a notification, a face, a touch. Your body has been used every day since you were old enough to walk. Not in a gym, in the world. Your muscles know the specific weight of the materials your environment requires you to move. Your cardiovascular system has a baseline of sustained low-intensity activity that keeps it running at the efficiency it was designed for. You are tired at night in the way that follows physical use, rather than in the way that follows physical inactivity combined with mental overstimulation. The sleep that comes is deep. The waking is complete. You do not know what depression is. You know grief, profound, embodied, communally held grief when someone you love dies. But the specific chronic flatness of a nervous system deprived of its required inputs, that you do not know. Your operating system is running in the environment it was built for. And you do not notice it, any more than you notice breathing. It is simply what being alive feels like when the inputs are correct. But here is where the investigation reaches its first unexpected turn. Revelation 1. The things that the ancestral human would not recognize in your life are almost entirely external. The screen, the architecture, the food, the transportation, the social scale, the temporal disconnection from natural rhythm. All of these are surface features of the modern environment. They are not you. They are the container you are living in. Revelation 2. The things the ancestral human would immediately, viscerally, completely recognize in you are not behaviors or habits or practices. They are feelings. The specific ache of missing someone. The specific joy of being genuinely laughed with. The specific fear that arrives when someone you love is in danger. The specific satisfaction of having done something difficult with your body. The specific hunger for a story that makes sense of suffering. The specific wonder of looking at the night sky and feeling both very small and very important simultaneously. These feelings have not changed. They cannot change. They are not cultural. They are not learned. They are the output of a nervous system architecture that was fixed 300,000 years ago and has not been meaningfully altered since. Revelation 3. And this is the one that changes the entire frame of the investigation. The ancestral human would recognize you not despite the modern world you live in, but through it. They would see the feelings running underneath the unfamiliar surface. And what they would see would be, without any ambiguity, one of their own. Here is the question that this investigation has been building toward, and that most discussions of ancestral humans and modern life never arrive at. The standard framing of this topic is loss. What we have lost by moving away from ancestral ways of living. What the modern world has taken from us. How far we have fallen from some imagined baseline of human wholeness. That framing is real, and it is important, and the data on loneliness and meaning deficit and physical inactivity and circadian dysregulation all support it. But it is incomplete, and the incompleteness matters. Because the question that the ancestral human would actually be asking, if they could see you, right now, in your life, is not what you have lost. They would not be oriented toward loss. Loss was a daily reality of their existence. People died. Seasons failed. Groups split. Loss was the texture of life. The question they would be asking is the question that the ancestral operating system has been asking every moment of your conscious existence, so continuously and so quietly that you have learned to hear it as background noise rather than as the central signal it actually is. Are you still trying? Are you still reaching toward connection, toward purpose, toward belonging, toward the stories that make suffering bearable? Are the deepest instincts of the species that built you still running? The question is not whether you have preserved the ancestral life. The question is whether you have preserved the ancestral will. And the answer that 300,000 years of human persistence in the face of every possible adversity is pointing toward, is yes. You have. You are. But here is where the modern understanding of what it means to be human completely fails us. We measure humanity by capability, by knowledge, by the sophistication of our technology and the complexity of our institutions and the scale of our reach. We think of ourselves as more human than our ancestors because we can do more than they could. The ancestral human looking at you is not measuring any of those things. They are measuring the only thing that 300,000 years of survival experience taught them to measure: the quality of your attachment to other humans, the purposefulness of your physical existence, the depth of your belonging to something that continues beyond you, and the continuity of your capacity for the specific, irreplaceable, unjustifiable human act of caring whether the people around you are still alive. By those metrics, the only metrics that 300,000 years of human evolution actually cares about, you are not less human than your ancestor. You are the same human, running the same operating system, in a harder environment. Here is the assumption most people bring to this topic, that the ancestral human, confronted with modern life, would be overwhelmed by confusion and conclude that the modern human has become something different, something other than what they recognize as human, something diminished, something altered, something that has traded its essential nature for convenience and comfort. The data says something completely different. The social neuroscience, the attachment research, the evolutionary psychology, the cross-cultural anthropology, all of it converges on a finding that is the opposite of diminishment. The modern human, despite living in an environment that provides almost none of the inputs that the ancestral operating system was built to receive, still generates the same outputs that the ancestral operating system was built to generate, still loves with the same architecture, still grieves with the same biological depth, still reaches toward connection with the same neurological urgency, still tells stories, still watches the night sky, still wakes at 3 in the morning with the same specific fear that something has gone wrong with someone they love. The operating system is not damaged, it is not corrupted. It is running in the wrong environment, generating the outputs of deprivation rather than the outputs of adequacy, but it is running. The ancestral human would recognize this immediately. Not the life, the person running the life. This is what 300,000 years of human persistence, and the social neuroscience of belonging, and the evolutionary psychology of meaning, and the craniofacial biology of dietary change, and the immunology of microbial exposure, and the respiratory physiology of nasal breathing, and every other investigation we could conduct into the gap between the ancestral human and the modern one, has been building toward. The ancestral human looking at your life would be confused by almost everything external. They would not understand the screen. They would not understand the scale of the city. They would not understand the food. They would not understand the physical stillness. They would not understand the social shallowness. They would not understand the disconnection from light and dark and season and soil. And then they would look at your face, and they would see something they have seen every day of their lives in every person they have ever known. They would see a human being who is trying, who is afraid, who loves specific people in specific ways that cannot be replaced or transferred, who wants their life to mean something, who tells stories to make the hard parts bearable, who feels the night differently than the day, who reaches toward other people even when reaching is painful, who keeps going even when going is difficult. And they would know, with the certainty of someone whose entire existence has been built on the ability to read another human accurately, that what they are looking at is one of their own. Not despite the modern world. Through it, the research on meaning deficit, the specific form of psychological distress produced not by trauma or pathology, but by the absence of the conditions that make human life feel worth living, has converged on findings that are both sobering and useful. A 2017 meta-analysis in Psychological Bulletin found that the single strongest predictor of subjective well-being across cultures, age groups, and socioeconomic categories was not income, health, or relationship status. It was the sense that one's life served a purpose beyond oneself, that one's actions mattered to other people, that one's presence in the world made a specific and irreplaceable contribution. This is the ancestral condition translated into modern psychological language. The ancestral human whose actions kept 15 people alive experienced this sense continuously and automatically. The modern human must construct it deliberately, must choose to invest in the small groups, the specific relationships, the purposeful physical activities, and the narratives of contribution that the ancestral environment provided automatically. The choice is harder than the automatic, but it is available. And the research suggests it is the most powerful single lever available for the restoration of well-being in an environment that was not designed to provide it. The ancestral human who woke before dawn on the edge of the African continent 300,000 years ago and checked whether the people around them were still breathing was not performing a ritual. They were not following a cultural practice. They were expressing the most fundamental output of the human operating system, the specific, irreducible, unjustifiable care for the continued existence of specific other people. That care has not changed. It cannot change. It is not encoded in culture or in habit or in tradition. It is encoded in the biology of attachment, in the neurochemistry of love, in the specific hormonal response of a parent to a child's cry, of a friend to a friend's distress, of a human to the unmistakable signal that another human is suffering and could be helped. You carry this. You have always carried it. The modern world has made it harder to express, has given you fewer people to express it to, in more superficial contexts, at greater distances, with less physical presence. But it has not removed it. And every time you feel the pull toward another person, every time you reach out, every time you show up, every time you stay when it would be easier to leave, you are expressing something that is 300,000 years old and has survived everything that has ever tried to replace it. 300,000 years ago, a human being looked up at the same night sky you will look at tonight. They did not know what the stars were. They did not know how far away they were. They did not know that they were looking at light that had traveled for millions of years before reaching their eyes. They just looked. And they felt something that had no name in their language, but that you would recognize immediately. The specific feeling of being a small thing in a large darkness, and finding that the feeling is not only bearable but somehow necessary. They wondered why they were here. They had no answer. They went to sleep and woke up and continued. You will look at that same sky tonight. You will feel something that has no adequate name in your language either. You will wonder why you are here. You will have no answer. You will go to sleep and wake up and continue. Your ancestor would recognize every part of that sequence. Not the apartment, not the device you checked before bed, not the city visible through the window. They would recognize you. The wondering. The continuing. The specific human insistence on meaning in the face of a universe that offers none automatically. So here is the question that 300,000 years of human persistence is asking as this investigation ends. You are not losing your humanity to the modern world. You are carrying 300,000 years of it in every decision you make, in every person you love, in every night you look at the sky and ask why you are here. Your ancestor asked the same question and kept going. Just like you, the question the bones and the sky and the belonging hunger and the love are all asking is simply this. Now that you know what you are carrying, what are you going to do with it?